Hello, hello, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Nadine Zalmot. I'm a somatic healing practitioner and a money coach. Coming at you today is January 14th, 2025. I just got back from a beautiful trip to Oaxaca in Mexico, the most special place. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to go back. I got to spend a little bit of time with my little brother, with my younger brother, and we had the sweetest time together. And he was actually there in Mexico for a 6 week trip. I got to join him for a couple of days, and he was just the sweetest, most generous person on this trip. He insisted on spoiling me, and spoil me he did. He was so, so sweet. And I really enjoyed how much I enjoyed seeing how much joy it gave him to be generous with me. Um, but he did mention something. He said once the trip is over, because he's doing this 6 week long trip, he's going to go back to where he lives in Berlin. He is going to have to start over financially because this trip has depleted his savings. He is employed, so he's not that worried, and I'm not worried about him. But when I got back, so I got back yesterday, I realized that I never got the chance to share with him some wisdom, some nuggets, my 2 cents, as his like big sister, money coach, big sister, on what I would do if I were to start over financially. And then I thought to myself, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, a lot of my listeners that have started over financially at some point in their lives, or maybe they are now, or maybe in the future. So why don't I, instead of sending my 2 cents to him in a voice memo, why don't I just record it and share it with the world so that somebody else maybe out there might, utilize this information and start over on in a good way, because a lot of times when we start over financially, it's very overwhelming, and it's good to know that if you are in a place right now where you need to start over, you're not alone. You haven't done anything wrong with your money. You haven't done a mistake, even though it might feel that you did. Okay. So actually, what's really cool is that we bought a house last month, I would say. I'm not sure, all the months are like bleeding in together. I am in a position right now where it feels like I'm starting over financially. So, this is what I'm doing right now to rebuild our finances. And all this information, I'm going to be sharing 7 steps with you. And in these 7 steps, I hope that you find a lot of value. Okay. I personally have been in a position of needing to start over financially many, many times on many different occasions in my life. Some of them were, a little bit painful, like when I got divorced in 2011 and I had to start all over. I was living in France at the time, and I moved back to Australia, and I really started from zero. Um, and then 2023, my husband and my dog and I moved back from Australia to Albuquerque. So we started over again. And then now that we're, buying a house, it feels like we're starting over because we've depleted all our savings on buying a house, closing costs, etc. A couple of times in my past where I had to start over because of like really, really fun things is when I just decided to follow Pearl Jam around Australia in 2006. And I did that again, I think in 2013, when I decided to follow Queens of the Stone Age and Nine Inch Nails across Australia. So, there are many reasons why a person might start over financially. The thing is that sometimes when we start over, like when let's say you are starting over financially now and it's January, and it's because maybe you've overindulged or overspent over Christmas and all that stuff. It happens, right? So please, the first thing I really want to mention is it might feel overwhelming, but I'm going to simplify it for you. Like I said, I've done this 1,000 times. I've got a PhD. No, I don't. But I feel like I've got a PhD in starting over financially. And I hope that you grab a pen and paper and write these things down. Okay. So the first thing that I would begin with is securing your income. I know that perhaps the first impulse would be to start saving straight away. But that's not what I would recommend, to be honest. When we find ourselves overindulging with food, for example, we declare that that's it. Tomorrow we are going to start on a diet and blah, blah, blah. But guess what? It doesn't work in the same way when it comes to money. You need a current to make the river flow. You cannot start thinking about saving money before you make sure that you are not going to create an unintentional deficit. So when you start thinking, when you're starting over and you're like, okay, I'm going to save, you might create something called what I call a deficit. Okay, a deficit can happen in many ways, but it can happen from underestimating your expenses or when you unrealistically declare that you are going to forego all non essential expenses. Okay, this is really important. Okay, a deficit can also happen from underestimating your emotional needs, especially if you are starting over financially because like as a result of something painful that you might need support with, right? Like if you moved countries because of a divorce or moved houses because of a divorce or you lost someone that you really love, you not only require a budget to move, but you also need to rebuild your actual life. Like you might need to buy things and you might need emotional support, okay? So whether it's therapy, whether it's yoga, whether it's coaching, whether it's pots or pans and beds and mattresses, whatever it is, or setting money aside to spend quality time with friends, that is all very important things and you cannot dismiss them. You need to account for them because you need to do them. You need to take care of yourself. Your emotional health comes before your wealth. Why? Because your wealth is informed by your emotional health. So the first thing is securing your income. Okay, that's the very, very important thing, and not thinking about savings just yet. Um, a practice that really served me in these situations where I felt like I was starting from zero is actually focusing on what I do have. Even when what I don't have is the gaping obvious in the situation. So when you shift your attention, and sometimes it's really hard and you need to kind of like I'm not force it, but like kind of force it a little bit is looking at what you do have, okay, instead of what you don't have. Looking at what resources you have versus the things that you don't have. Okay, maybe your attention will start going towards what skills do you have to monetize? What things do you have that you can sell? Who is in your network of people that might hire you or know someone that needs your skills? Or maybe if you're a coach, looking at your client list, that's another asset that you have, seeing who might need a refresher with you or maybe send you referrals. Okay, so when I say securing an income, maybe it means getting a job. Maybe it means if you have a job, making sure, like being clear on how much is coming in the next few months. Or maybe you need to get a part time job. Or maybe you need to kind of get a little bit creative if you work for yourself. Okay. So, if you're a coach and you have no money coming in or a little bit of money coming in, it's important to understand what is happening. It's also important to understand that there are some ethical ways in which you can make money quickly. Tad Hargrave from Marketing for Hippies calls this the low hanging fruits. Okay, so some easy ways, if you're a coach, to make quick money in an ethical way is maybe setting up a referral system. Maybe it's for your colleagues or your friends or past clients where they can send you people, and if they sign up, you give them a specific amount of money or a percentage. Maybe doing a promo offer, like giving like a small like it doesn't have to be a low cost investment, but it can sometimes be easier for people to start working with you when you give a low time investment, instead of like a 6 month container, giving a single session and see how that goes. Okay. Or maybe doing a promo where you're giving a free assessment if people join your program, within the next week or whatever. There are really nice ethical ways of doing it. Maybe look at your archives again, like looking at what you do have, looking at your archives, look at maybe you've got past programs or past recordings of workshops that you can start promoting. So it's really important to shift your perspective to what you do have and also make sure that there is income coming in. Now, the thing is, when we start over, it again, I said this a million times, but I really want to emphasize that it can be overwhelming. Okay, even if the reason why you're starting over is because of something positive. And the impulse might sound like, I need more money. And yes, you do. But it is very, very important, especially when your nervous system feels overwhelmed and you're feeling flustered already, is to determine how much do you need exactly. Remember, this is not a forever thing. We're just trying to get you back on your feet. Okay. So when I sit with clients who are starting over and I help them see how much exactly do they need, they feel a massive sense of relief because it felt overwhelming. And then when we started getting really clear on the nitty gritty of what is needed, it feels it no longer feels insurmountable. It feels possible. Okay. So the next step, step number two, is getting clear on your expenses. Of course, expenses include your housing, your bills, your transportation, your food. If you've got a loan or a credit card, these the minimum monthly payments for now. Okay. You need to determine this number, and it's I don't. I mean, you can start thinking about how to trim this number now, but sometimes it's not possible. Okay. So that's not the priority. The priority is not saving for now. The priority is securing your income and getting clear on your expenses. Okay. And sometimes, as we are trying to secure an income, we might need to rely on a credit card. That is actually a blessing because a lot of people come to me feeling really ashamed because of credit card debt, and they got into credit card debt because of really difficult circumstances. And then I just ask them a very simple question, like, where would you be today had it not been for your credit card, or if you didn't have the option of using a credit card? Because I've lived in countries where having a credit card is not even a thing, right? And they would say, I would be out on the streets. I would have had to rough it up. And then they naturally go back and say, okay, well, I'm really glad I had that credit card. But obviously, if we're relying on that credit card, that is another thing that we need to start getting clear in on when we're looking at our expenses. Okay. So the third step after securing an income and getting clear on your numbers is to assess your needs. Okay. Do you need money for coaching? Do you need money for therapy? Do you need a new bed because you don't have one? Rebuilding your life is going to require money. It's going to require help from people. It's going to require, spending time on Facebook Marketplace, for example, or whatever, right? So there are things that you will be needing ASAP, and there are things that are nice to have. Like when we are here in this new house, we've got pretty much everything we need, but there are things that were really, really necessary to obtain, like I don't know how, like things that we needed to seal off the windows and like really important things. So we have been really what's the word, like discerning and intentional with, yeah, even though it feels like it's urgent, is it really urgent because we really need to rebuild our savings, for example? Okay, so it's really up to you, but don't let it be like a black and white thing, like really be very in tune with what your emotional needs as well, because even though something might not feel like an urgent need, but you need it to feel good, do it. That's I would consider that as a need, not a want. Okay. So the fourth step is to create a plan for your income and your expenses. So Maybe you need, I'm not an app person. I'm sure there are many apps out there that can help you with this, but I wouldn't know what they are. In your notebook or in your spreadsheet, create a very simple outline of what's coming in and what needs to go out, your income and your expenses. You can call that a budget. You don't have to call that a budget. I don't call it a budget because a budget feels like you're restricting yourself. This feels more like a plan. I actually have a very simple spreadsheet that I give to my clients that I'm going to pop the link to that spreadsheet in the show notes. If you need it, it's yours, okay? Things might feel a little bit uh, tight, a little bit weird in the beginning. Please do not despair. Remember that things are only going to get better. And it's just like taking off in an airplane. The first steps are always like the takeoff is always the hardest, and then things will get better. I promise you. I've done this a million times. I promise you. Okay? And I would say, like, look at your income, look at your expenses. There might be a chance that there might be a surplus. There might be a chance that there might not be a surplus. Okay. So that takes me to the next step, which is please do not shoot for the stars. Don't do it. Don't get really too ambitious because you're going to set yourself up for stress and disappointment. Okay. I want you to start very, very small. Okay. When you're at zero, it's very tempting to be like, okay, I'm gonna like restrict everything and save up all this money. Please don't do that. It's tempting to focus on big long term fixes and goals and blah, blah, blah. Remember that we do that because we're uncomfortable, and we set these goals so that we escape from the feeling of discomfort. But what really happens is that these goals are sometimes unrealistic, especially if you're rebuilding for real and you're not prioritizing your emotional safety, and you're actually really, really stressing and triggering your nervous system, which is already triggered because when we're starting from zero, your nervous system is on high alert and you are going to just overload it. Okay. That's why I would say starting small and focusing on momentum and not motivation. Okay, maybe but takes me to the next step, I think 6. Yeah, this is the sixth step, which is to build your savings. Having savings is good. Okay, saving all your money is not good because you got to live. You're here to live, you're here to experience life. But having money in savings is really, really good for many, many reasons. One of the reasons to have money set aside is for when life is lifing, right? Generally, it is called an emergency fund. It just feels alerting to my nervous system. So I don't necessarily like to call it that. Call it whatever you want to call it. Call it, find a name that feels better than an emergency fund. And of course, as a motivated human being, you might be thinking, but I have a lot of things that I want to save for. Saving for multiple goals at once is actually possible. This is what I actually teach my clients to do. But the purposes of this episode is starting over. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about an emergency fund or whatever you want to call it. So how much do you actually need in your emergency fund when you're starting over? A lot of people will give you this like fixed number or a percentage. I don't do any of this because honestly, it depends. It depends on the relative stability of your income. Maybe you've got like a stream of clients, or you've got employment or part time employment. So that is going to change. It also depends on where you live, how many dependents you have, and many other things. But if you're really wanting to start over, it's very safe to just generally or generalize this by saying start by saving $1,000 and or €1,000 or whatever it is, and build from there. Setting that aside will make you feel better. Like I said, like when we start small, we start by emotionally feeling more and more confident, and that's what's going to build momentum. And if you're paying off debt at the moment, I will still say prioritize building your emergency or your saving funds before you start doubling up on paying off your debt. The seventh and final step for you today is to celebrate. Celebration sounds lame. It sounds corny. You're like, Nadine, really celebrate. But yes, all these like everybody out there on in the online self-help world talking about expanding your nervous system's capacity to receive and blah blah blah. Well, you know what? You can do that in a very quick and easy way, which is celebrating. Okay, celebrating every $5 you put aside, celebrating that you have an income, celebrating that you are clear on your expenses. So many people out there in the world are not as simple as it sounds. They're really not. So celebration puts your nervous system at ease, even if it's for a small amount of time. And that's how we increase your capacity for good stuff, for good money stuff. A lot of times we don't have a capacity in our nervous system for financial goodness, and that's how we build it. So, I shared a lot of practical things with you today, but you know me, and I kind of mentioned it in the beginning. I really, really care about your emotional health because we cannot. What is wealth without emotional health? So, what I want to say, or how I want to conclude this episode, is by saying that it can feel overwhelming, but it is a beautiful opportunity for you to rebuild with intention and align your money with your values, even align your whole life with your values. Okay. And it's like and it's okay and it's normal if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling frustrated right now. Acknowledge these feelings. Starting over does not mean you failed. It simply means that you are living, you're alive. Change is one of the most inevitable things in life, and money is just a part of it. So please prioritize your safety and your stability and tap into your support and your resources. And you don't have to do this alone. Please look for support groups online, look for support groups within your friends, wherever you can find really positive encouragement and advice. If you're talking down at yourself, please stop. Please stop. There's no time for the inner critic right now. We'll deal with it later. But right now, we need as many people as possible to be in your corner because that will make a world of a difference. And of course, if you would like my help and guidance with setting up a personalized starting over plan for you, please book a session. You can find that in the show notes. And I know it might sound a little bit counterintuitive to pay for someone to help you with money when you're trying to save, but 100% of my clients reported that they wouldn't have had the success with saving money that they have had without my help. So you can go farther when we are working together. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your listenership. I appreciate your support. If this was helpful for you, please share it with a friend who needs it. And it would be really great if you left a 5-star review for me. That would really help grow the show. Thank you so much. And I will see you next time on the Unfuck Your Money Show. Signing off, your host, Nadine Zalmot. Bye for now.